Hi folks, we're just looking at Jean-Paul Sartre, and we're looking at his thoughts on Albert Camus, or Camus. When Camus died in a car crash in January 1960, Sartre wrote his brief obituary piece, which was published on France in a French paper on the 7th of January 1960. 6 months ago, or even yesterday, we were wondering, what will he do? For the time being, riven by contradictions which we ought to respect, he had chosen silence. But he was one of those rare beings for whom one can be bothered to wait because they choose slowly and stick by their choice. One day he would speak. We did not even dare venture to speculate on what he would say, but we thought that, like each one of us, he was changing as the world changed, and that was enough for him to remain a living presence. We had quarrelled, Camus and I. A quarrel is nothing, even though we were not to see one another again. Just another way of living together, without losing sight of one another in the narrow little world where it is our lot to live. It didn't stop me thinking about him, feeling his eyes fixed on the page of the book, or on the newspaper that I was reading, and wondering, what has he to say about that? What is he saying about it now? Sometimes I considered his silence too cautious, sometimes painful, according to circumstances or moods. But it was a quality of every day, like heat or light, though human. One lived with his ideas or against them, as they revealed to us in his book, particularly La Chute, the finest and least well understood, but always through them. This was an adventure peculiar to French culture. We tried to pinpoint the different phases of the movement, to predict where it would eventually lead. He was the current heir in the century and at odds with history, so that long line of moralists whose works represent what is most original in French literature, his humanism, unyielding, narrow, pure, austere, sensual, engaged in dubious struggle against the mighty and misshapen events for our time. But conversely, through the stubbornness of his opposition in the heart of our age against the Machiavellians and the sacred cow of realism, he asserted the existence of morality. One might say that he was the unwavering assertion. One had only to read or reflect to come up against the human values that he held in his fist. He called political activity into question. One had to pass him or to assault him. He was, in a word, indispensable for the tension that creates intellectual life. There was even something positive about his silence. These last years, this Cartesian of the absurd refused to abandon the sure ground of morality, and to venture into uncertain paths of practice. We guessed that this was the case, and he was also guessed at the struggles which he kept to himself, because morality, taken on its own, at the same time demands rebellion and condemns it. We waited. We had to wait. We had to know, whatever he might eventually have done or decided to do, Camus never ceased to be one of the main forces in our cultural field, and to present in his own way the history of France and of this century. But we might perhaps have known and understood his itinerary. He had done everything, a whole body of work, and as always everything still remained to be done. He said to himself, my work is ahead of me, it is finished. The particular scandal of his death is the abolition of the order of mankind by the inhuman. The human order is still no more than disorder. It is unjust, precarious, it encompasses murder and starvation, but at least it is founded, maintained and protected by men. That is the order in which Camus had to live. This man, always on the move, calls us into question, and was himself a question looking for an answer. He was living in the middle of a long life, for us, for himself, for those men who preserved the existing order, and for those who reject it, was important for him to emerge from his silence, to take a decision, to reach a conclusion. Others might die of old age, others always on parole may die at any moment without this changing the meaning of their lives or of life itself, but for us who are disorientated and unsure, it was necessary for the best of us to reach the end of the tunnel. Rarely have the characters of his work, and the conditions of the historical moment so clearly demand that a writer should live. The accident which killed Camus is a scandal because it demonstrates at the heart of the human world the absurdity of what we demand in the depths of our being. At the age of 20, suddenly stricken with a malady which was to alter his life, he discovered the absurd, essential denial of mankind. He came to terms with it. He thought out his unbearable condition, and he survived. Yet one would think that only his first works tell the truth about his life. Since this cured patient has now encountered an unpredictable death, which struck him from outside, the absurd is the question that no one asks him any longer, which is no longer asked anyone. This silence that is now, not even now, a silence which is absolutely nothing anymore. I don't believe it. As soon as it manifests itself, the inhuman becomes part of the human. Every life that stops, even that of such a young man, is at the same time a smashed gramophone record and a completed life. For all those who loved him, there is an unbearable absurdity in this death, but we must learn to see this mutilated body of a work as the writer entire works. To the very extent that Camus' humanism contains a human attitude towards death that was to overtake him, to the extent that his proud search for happiness implied and demanded the inhuman necessity of death, we may recognize in these works and in the life that is no longer separable from them a pure and victorious attempt by a man to reclaim every instant of his existence from his death to come. Reminds me of that passage in the Bible, "Death, where is your sting?" The question is, what are we trying to do? What is atheism trying to do? What is it trying to achieve? Stripping down the altars, pulling down the religious altars, but in the end, what will it achieve? Will there be peace? Will there be hope? Will there be a new life? Will there be new vision? Isn't it not the case that in humanity's hand, the hand of humanity only takes what it holds, and what it holds it takes to become dust? Whether we be a Camus who writes a great novel, or whether be a Sartre who can write great philosophical tomes, at the end of the day, all that we achieved as humanity is only going to become dust. And yes, we can dance in the light of that moment as if it was a candle that has just been lit and taken a light on a dark night. But that candle will go out, and we can enjoy that candle light for a moment. And yes, that candle light might be beautiful, but at the end of the day, that candle light will go out. And all that we achieve as human beings will be snuffed out one day, if not snuffed out by our own corruption, by our own foolishness, by our own desecration. Not by religion, but by our own inner desecration of ourselves, for we are fighting within ourselves, and we are not at home with ourselves as human beings. And no matter how much atheism vaunts itself, no matter how much atheism is angry at religion, there is a self-righteousness there that will not seek to go to the deepest and most profoundest of thinking of all. And that profoundest of thinking is what Calvin states in his Calvin's Institutes in chapter 1, where he talks about that we need to know ourselves, we need to know who we are, and we will never know who we are if we do not search our hearts. As Socrates said, we can search the whole world for knowledge, but if we don't know who we are, then we will never know what it was all about. If I go down to a pool on a hot sunny day and the light shines upon the pool, I can see my reflection, I can see who I am. And that is where God comes into it. As I look into God, I see who I am in reality. Who I am. The man where humanity runs from. where civilization in all its culture and sophistication runs away from seeking that which needs to be known, that is the self. And we run away from it. You run away from it and I run away from it. But when we come face to face with Christ and seek Him and see Him, then we see who we really are. And this veneer of civilization, with all its culture and with all its sophistication, is nothing but a rotten carcass. It is nothing but a charade. It is nothing but a make-believe world that is escaping from the reality of itself. Socrates said the best thing is to know yourself. When we come to know Christ, we begin to see who we really are. We begin to see that we're not what we said we were. We began to see that what we pretended to be is not the case. We are confronted with brute reality. The cord of civilization and its sophistication is taken off and laid bare as we meet Christ. It is a painful process, but in the cutting away of our fakeness, we begin to find truth. It says that in Christ the light came and the darkness did not comprehend it. And He said He is the light of the world. And if we come to Him with humility, we will learn something that no scientist, no philosopher, no artist could ever teach us. We will learn who we really are and why we are meant to be here. That's what I learned from meditating on Camus today. Take care and God bless you.